What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about the United Nations. What is it? What do they do? I mean, besides being a big group of countries, I'm not exactly sure. And I'll be the first to admit, this is way overdue for me to learn about. And to be completely honest, I actually think for many Americans, there's these things like the United Nations that we hear about all the time, but we don't bother to learn about what exactly they are, or maybe we're just too embarrassed to admit we don't quite understand. So today, I really want to check out this video by TLDR News Global about how the United Nations works and just have all of this explained to me. A few weeks ago, I actually learned about what the EU was, the European Union, for the first time. I had that explained to me, and that was extremely helpful and eye-opening, so I really want to get on this. United Nations explained. Let's take a look.
So, following World War I, countries wanted to avoid a repeat of the horrific global conflict, and their leaders formed the League of Nations, dedicated to preventing the outbreak of further wars.
Okay.
As would become catastrophically obvious mere decades later, the League wasn't fit for purpose, largely because the United States refused to join, instead preferring the isolationism advocated by the framers.
Isn't that like very topical, or what's the word? That's very like relevant for what's happening today, because the United States, certainly it would seem our policy now is that of isolationism, we seem to be doing everything in our power to isolate ourselves, or perhaps piss everyone else off, and as a result we will be isolated. I don't know. That just kind of really stuck out to me. Funny enough, that's not really what the topic of this video was supposed to be about, but this just happens to really relate to what's happening right now with the United States. Anyway, interesting. The League of Nations, we didn't want to join it. And this happened after World War I. So we're talking about like a little over 100 years ago, when the world decided we needed some kind of group or league or whatever you want to call it of countries to work together to not have catastrophic world events happen. That's worked out so well. So let's keep going.
However, the US didn't really account for the effects its new status as a major power would have on global order if it remained isolated. The weakened League of Nations.
I'm just like kind of blown away how relevant this is to what's happening right now. Anyway, you could apply this so much to right now.
The weakened League of Nations was wholly ineffective in its task of preventing another large-scale conflict.
Okay.
Once again, the world was rocked by World War, this time with even more disastrous consequences.
Okay.
During the final months of the war, states came together to create an international organisation more effective at preventing conflict, and the United Nations was born.
I see. So it took until World War II for the United States, for us to get our act together and be like, okay, geez, that's kind of sad, isn't it? That it took like another world war for us, America, to be like, okay, we'll join your group and work together to stop global chaos and conflict. Like, geez. Yeah, as an American, that's like not something, not a bright spot in our history, is it?
On the 24th of October 1945, the United Nations came into existence following the ratification of the UN Charter by the five main allies: the United States, the United Kingdom, France, the Soviet Union, and China, as well as a majority of other signatories.
Right. So I've heard of some of this stuff. World War II. I've heard of that. Okay. Yes, I've heard of some of this stuff. Funny enough, I bet there's some Americans out there who don't even know that the United States is part of the United Nations. I bet you that there's some out there. Anyway.
On January the 10th, 1946, the General Assembly met for the first time in Methodist Central Hall in Westminster, and the Security Council met for the first time a week later.
Okay.
A week after that, the General Assembly adopted the first UN resolution, establishment of a commission to deal with the problems raised by the discovery of atomic energy.
Yes.
This committee is composed of the members of the Security Council, and, when it's not on the Council, Canada. We mentioned the General Assembly and the Security Council, but what exactly are they?
Yeah, so the United Nations is really, really big, right? Like, there are a lot of countries that are part of the UN, from what I understand. I had no idea it was divided up into any kind of parts, or there's a council, and then the General Assembly. Sometimes Canada gets to be part of the Security Council. Okay.
The UN has 6 principal organs that oversee the organisation's main functions.
Organs? Did he say organs? It has like an animal? Organs?
The UN has 6 principal organs that oversee the organisation's main functions.
Okay.
The General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the International Court of Justice, the Secretariat, and the Trusteeship Council.
Oh my God.
Each principal organ is located at the UN headquarters in New York, with the exception of the ICJ, which
I didn't even know that the UN headquarters was in the United States. I'll admit that openly. Jeez. I'm a bit embarrassed, but that's exactly what, like, the reason I want to do this is, admit things that I don't know and that I should know, and then, rectify it by learning about it. So anyway, it's in New York. Who knew? Probably a lot of people.
which is located at The Hague in the Netherlands. The General Assembly serves at the largest body of the UN, featuring representation from each of the member states.
Okay.
The Assembly is the UN's primary deliberative body and the forum before which we see most of the highest profile diplomacy take place, as the yearly session features not only ambassadors but plenty of heads of state.
Right.
The General Assembly primarily deals with questions of international peace, admission of member states, and the UN budget, all of which require a 2/3 majority vote, while less important votes pass by a simple majority.
Less important votes. So certain things require
third majority vote.
Certain things require a 2/3 majority in the UN, and certain things require just a 50% majority. Who decides what needs how many votes? And that's interesting. Anyway, so the first thing that they deliberated about in the UN was like atomic nuclear power and atomic bombs, and that makes a ton of sense to me that at the time that would be the number one issue that the world collectively would be like freaking out about and wanting to come up with some laws and regulations on that.
While less important votes pass by a simple majority. The Assembly is led by a president, elected for a 1-year term. The presidency offers a chance for ambassadors from smaller states to lead the world.
The United Nations, this collection of a huge part of the planet, of countries all around the world, leaders from everywhere, has a president? That kind of surprises me, that the UN has a president, like a leader. Because you never hear about the president of the United Nations. Like here in the United States, I don't even know who that is right now. And goodness knows I've never heard anyone talk about how are they elected or the importance of that or...
as few states who have boasted a president of the General Assembly can be classified as major powers, the closest candidate for that honour being Canada in 1952.
Okay.
Instead of being dominated by these major powers, the presidency frequently features states like Mexico, Afghanistan, Liberia, St. Lucia, and currently the Maldives.
Okay.
The next is the Security Council. The Council is tasked with maintaining international peace and security, and has succeeded at least to the degree that recent wars generally have been contained to the region, not global scale.
That's true. I was about to be very critical and be like, this is supposed to have stopped global conflict? Like, I don't know. That is a difficult task to have to do. But they're arguing at least the conflicts have been like confined to the general region that they're in. That's true. Yeah.
The Council's membership is limited to 15 states at any given time, with 10 seats rotating and 5 permanent seats awarded to the 5 main allies: the United States, United Kingdom, France, the Russian Federation, and the People's Republic of China.
So these 5 main nations kind of get special treatment, or just because they're really big, important, like world economies, countries, United States, UK, France, Russia, and China. Interesting, especially these days, like with everything going on that Russia is doing. That's interesting.
The 10 rotating members of the Council are elected for 2-year terms. India, Ireland, Kenya, Mexico, and Norway will rotate out later this year, while Albania, Brazil, Gabon, Ghana, and the United Arab Emirates will rotate next year.
Okay.
The permanent members, ironically, have gone through a few changes themselves. Initially, the Soviet Union held a permanent seat, but the seat passed to the Russian Federation following the Soviet fall.
Right, okay.
The People's Republic of China's seat initially was held by the Republic of China, which still survives as Taiwan. However, following Mao Zedong's overthrow of Chiang Kai-shek's national government, the United Nations eventually expelled the Republic of China on October the 25th, 1971.
Okay.
And Taiwan has since lost even its observer status.
Okay.
Although the General Assembly relies on the good faith of member states to carry out its resolutions, the Security Council's resolutions are binding on all member states. These resolutions include mandating peaceful resolutions to disputes, imposing sanctions, participating in a multinational peacekeeping force, and authorising to use force when a breach of the peace has occurred or is imminent.
Pretty important stuff. Interesting how they make a distinction between the General Assembly and the decisions of the General Assembly are good faith. Like the countries that are members of the General Assembly of the United Nations are expected to carry out these mandates like in good faith. There's no law binding them to do it. They're just supposed to do these things. The Security Council, talking about reducing conflict and war in the world, these are like based on law, and it's like these are treaties, or what are they calling them, legally binding resolutions. Like these are agreements that the countries come to that are like legally you have to follow these orders.
However, the 5 permanent members each have a veto over any proposal before the Council.
Wow.
So, matters affecting any of the 5 generally are usually doomed to fail, leaving affected states to resort to customary international law to solve their disputes.
Wow. The 5 main member states, nations, really get a lot of power in the United Nations. I wonder, like, these are big, important countries, but if you're one of the other nations that's smaller, that must really, like, be annoying.
Moving to more peaceful matters, we come to the Economic and Social Council. The Council has jurisdiction over matters of economy, social welfare, environment, and international development.
Okay.
The Council has 54 members, elected by the General Assembly for 3 years, with 18 seats up each year.
Oh my God, there are so many different aspects to the United Nations. All these different seats and assemblies and boards and a president that I never knew of. There's so much more to the United Nations than I ever thought about or knew about.
The Council currently has 30 subsidiary bodies, ranging from regional commissions to bodies concerning criminal justice, women's rights, geographical names, and economic, social, and cultural rights. Next comes the International Court of Justice, more commonly known as the ICJ, or The Hague. The ICJ serves as the UN's main judicial body.
The United Nations has a court? Like, there's a huge international global court? Like, I didn't know about this.
And rules on matters of international law and issues advisory opinions. The court is composed of 15 judges, all of whom must be nominated by the Permanent Council of Arbitration, then win elections before both the General Assembly and the Security Council.
Wow.
The judges must be from different states and may not hold political, administrative, or professional office during their 9-year terms.
Wow, that's cool. Be like, if you're a judge on the United Nations Court of International Courtroom, like, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's a pretty big deal.
Although the court frequently convenes in its entirety, it may form chambers of 3 judges to deal with particular categories of cases, and decisions by the chambers carry the weight of the full court.
Wow, okay.
Notably, the court cannot compel a state to appear before it. Instead, it must rely on the state's consent.
This sounds so tricky because every country has their own, like, legal system. So it's like, when does this international courtroom actually come into effect?
It may be achieved by the parties to a dispute meeting one of 3 criteria: submitting a special agreement to the court, being state parties to a treaty that provides the court with jurisdiction over the dispute, or having all made declarations of their consent to the court's jurisdiction under the ICJ statute.
Okay.
Continuing our tour of the UN, we come next to the Secretariat. This body is the boots-on-the-ground organ of the UN, led by the Secretary-General and responsible for the UN's day-to-day business.
Organ.
The Secretary-General is nominated by the Security Council and elected by the General Assembly for a renewable 5-year term.
Okay.
They're assisted by thousands of UN staff members who carry out UN missions throughout the world.
Oh, cool.
When you see UN personnel working out in the field on development or relief missions, this is typically the body overseeing their efforts on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, this is probably the one thing the UN does that I've at least heard about this. This is great. These are like the boots on the ground, actual physical people that the UN sends out to do like humanitarian aid and stuff. They're wearing the vests that say United Nations. So this is the Secretariat Division that does all the... Okay, awesome.
The final principal organ of the UN is the Trusteeship Council. The Council was established in 1945 to provide supervision for 11 UN trust territories under the supervision of 7 member states.
Okay.
The purpose of the Council was to guide the territories under trusteeship towards being able to stand on their own as states in their own right.
Oh.
The Council's rules initially required it to meet annually, but the Council amended its rules to require meetings only when required shortly before suspending operations in 1994, when all the trust territories had attained self-government or independence.
Oh, this was once necessary and now not really.
The Council remains inactive, but when it is active, it's composed of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council.
Okay.
However, despite the Council's inactive status, it continues to elect a president and vice president so that it may be ready for action if called upon.
Okay, cool.
The return to the Trusteeship Council may be on the horizon, however, as there have been calls to redefine the scope of the Council's duties to include environmental stewardship, though no decision has been taken to this point.
Because they think the people on this council don't just sit around doing nothing? Isn't that like a good thing? Do they really have to give them more work? It's not their fault if all these nations under the trusteeship have achieved self-governance and autonomy, and that if this organ of the UN is not needed, that's like a good thing.
So that's the UN and its principal organs in a nutshell. If you
Okay.
enjoyed this video, let us know.
I did enjoy this video. Oh, again, this was by TLDR News. They do a great job at explaining pretty complicated sort of things in a way that even I can understand, which is really saying something. So yeah, like I was saying, as an American, like a lot of my fellow Americans, I think I just didn't know what the UN was or what its purpose really was. And this got into a lot of specifics, which was great because I have a much better idea. Now, if on the news or whatever, somebody talks about the UN, it's like I feel like I understand what they're talking about, which is incredible. Knowledge is power and all that. I know what they're talking about, and it's great. So I'm actually quite pleased that I took a look at this. So anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on the United Nations or any of the things we talked about here today. That'd be awesome to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.